Good afternoon, everybody. It's Pete Meyer, Motor Age Magazine. Having a few little audio challenges on our end, but that's the beauty of doing things live. Hey, before we get started, I just want to share with everyone, you can see I'm not wearing the official Motor Age garb. I am wearing blue, and I'm wearing blue in recognition of Wear Blue Day as part of the support of National Child Abuse Prevention Month. That's April. I don't normally mix business and personal things together, but a few of you know that my wife and I operate a nonprofit called Bikers Care. It's a motorcycle-based group, and we try to do what we can to end the abuse of children in our community. So I just want to kind of lay this out for you guys. One in seven children will be a victim of abuse this year. 4 to 5 children a day die as a result of abuse in the United States. Most of those children are under the age of 4 years old. This is a problem that concerns all of us, whether you're a parent or not, whether your kids are grown or they're still infants. This is a community issue, and it takes a community to solve it, and it can be solved. So I'm asking you, from the bottom of my heart, get involved. Educate yourself on the signs. Know what to do if you suspect a child's in trouble. Advocate against abuse. Advocate in your community against the factors that lead to the abuse. Volunteer if you can. And the last, find an organization that you think is doing good work and donate your money. So, again, I'm not going to turn this into a whole spiel on my personal thing. You can see my pinwheels in the back for Pinwheels for Prevention Month. But again, if not, wear blue and do it for the kids. Anyway, speaking of kids, kind of a good lead in here, as I think my next guest will admit to. You know, one of the challenges that I get calls on all the time is finding good technicians. And, you know, we've kind of gotten into a situation in the industry where the pool of technicians, the talent, is getting a little smaller. Those who are coming out of the trade schools now who have the skill sets that we really want to get a hold of, well, every other technology industry in the country is looking for that same skill set. So we're competing against that. And then the challenges on the school side is bringing the next group in, bringing those young men and women in to our industry. And one organization that's working to meet those challenges and others is the Tech Force Foundation. And today I'm lucky to have Mr. Greg Settles. He is the Director for National Initiatives for the Tech Force Foundation. So let me bring him on and say, hey, Greg, how you doing?
Hi, Pete. Doing well. How about yourself?
You got to remember, I got to keep the audio going. So yeah, I'm doing good. I'm going to go ahead and let Greg tell everyone a little bit about the foundation while I stand behind in the background and flip a few of the media that he's provided for us to help illustrate what they're all about. And then we'll have a little chit-chat about the specifics, all right? So Greg, let me go ahead and pull you up again and turn it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Pete. Yeah, if you could go ahead and bring up the first slide, that would be great. So, as Pete mentioned, I'm from Tech Force Foundation, Director of National Initiatives, and I've been in that role for about 3 years. So the technician shortage and technician careers in general are very close to my heart. So Tech Force, what do we do actually? There's really a couple of different things. And the first one would be helping out with scholarships and grants. And Pete, if I could interrupt for just a second, I'm getting uh, feedback on everything I say. I don't know if you can deal with that. If so, that would be great. If not, I will just work through it. I'm just hoping it's not affecting what the audience is hearing. So we give away close to $2 million a year right now at Tech Force Foundation. Some of that goes to other organizations, other nonprofits, to schools in the way of grants. But the majority goes directly to students to provide them scholarships to attend technical training. And when I say technical training, I'm talking about really everything in the transportation industry. So it doesn't matter whether it's automotive, diesel, collision, motorcycle, marine, off-road, you name it. Any transportation related field is what we're talking about and what we support. So that's a pretty significant number. It's a good amount of money that's going back out to help young men and women with their education. But then the other side of Tech Force is something we started a couple of years ago, and it's called Future Tech Success. And that is an industry initiative, again, where we involve industry across all segments. And Pete, if you could go ahead and move to the next slide. So our tagline for that is when techs rock, America rolls. So it's all about supporting technicians and the role that they play in our world, which is a huge role. So future tech success is really our foundation acting as more or less a hub to pull together all the different resources within industry and all the different players and work together to help solve the technician shortage, to fill that pipeline that we just so desperately need filled, and to engage industry partners in achieving that. So with that, if you can go ahead to our next slide, Pete.
I go.
So we call this a three-pronged strategy. So there's a lot of moving pieces to future tech success, but these three different pieces are really kind of the heart and soul of it. They're the really big pieces, at a 30,000 foot level that we are focusing on and that we are putting a lot of effort into. So first of all, it's the marketing piece, and I'm going to talk more about all three of these in a few minutes, but just briefly mention them now. The second one is collective industry voice, again, bringing all of industry together to work on this, as a single concentrated effort. And the last one is hands-on tactile experiences. And you see at the bottom here, I show all the various channels for social media, absolutely critical for helping us get the messaging out and being a real integrated part of our strategy. Next slide, please. So just to give you an idea of who we have involved, you'll see a lot of big names up here, maybe some smaller ones that you don't recognize, but we're really going across all the different industry sectors. On the left side, you'll see organizations that have all contributed, as major sponsors of us. So they're all for-profit organizations. On the right side, you'll see a lot of industry association partners that you're probably familiar with. Here you see Skills USA, you see ASC, ASA. So one of the things that we did when we went out and started this initiative was I really wanted to talk with all the existing associations that are already focused on this. There's a lot of organizations that have been working on this before on different pieces. And I really wanted them to become involved with us, make sure they bought in and they were willing to partner with us in pulling together to solve this issue. So we had very good luck going out to other organizations. Virtually all of the associations out there that we've approached have joined. And so that's really great news for us. Next slide, please, Pete. So once we started this, and we said, okay, we want to solve the technician shortage. We want to help build this pipeline. But what is the demand really? So, I mean, I've always felt that it's virtually impossible to solve a problem or to hit a goal when you don't know what that goal is, right? So, if you talk to 10 different people, and not just people off the street, but people that are, let's say, major players, in our industry, high positions, and you ask them all, what is the technician shortage like? What is our demand really right now? How many do we need? You'd get 10 different answers, and it's always been that way. Unfortunately, there's never been really good numbers around what that shortage is. So I felt like the first thing we needed to do if we were going to address this is we really needed to know what those numbers were. We had to have a target that we could aim at and have some some confidence that we were going to be able to hit it. So, next slide, please, Pete. So here's the number. This is a huge number. I think hopefully most of you would look at that and be a little shocked. If you've never really looked at what you thought that number might be, this is probably higher than what you would have guessed. I know it is higher than what I guessed when I first was looking into it, and there are numbers out there now. So there's numbers that the Department of Labor puts out, the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, but they've never been particularly accurate, and they don't have any real almost seasonality, or there's no adjustment for what the economy is doing. So they'll put a number out, but it'll be, and I'm making this number up, let's say it's 50,000 technicians that you need a year. So they'll say for the next 10 years, you're going to, the industry will need 50,000 technicians. Well, do any of you know any business that runs exactly flat that has the same need over a period of 10 years? No, it doesn't make any sense. So part of what we've done in our algorithm is feed in a couple other things to the Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. So we have an algorithm that looks at what is the gross domestic product. What's the economy doing? What's the number of techs per vehicle, which has varied over time. It's varied as we've had changes in vehicle quality. It's changed as we've had changes in service times. How the number of hours that are needed to service a vehicle each year. So there's other factors that come into play here, but we have a model that we've tested and is very accurate. Can we go back to that slide again, Pete? So same slide. So you'll see this 125,000 technicians is across three different segments. So it's auto, diesel, and collision. Those are the only three segments in the industry that have large enough numbers and solid enough numbers that we can actually develop a model and be confident that it's correct. So you see here in 2019, we're talking about almost 78,000 technicians that are needed. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what makes up demand. The first thing you'll see at the top of that 2019 cell there is new positions. So what this means is growth in the industry. So if there were no changes at all in the industry this year, but just you looked at the growth year over year from last year, we would need almost 4,800 technicians in the automotive segment to fill those new positions. The next number, which is quite a bit larger, you'll see, is replacement demand. So replacement demand means all the positions that are created by people retiring, number one, and number two, just leaving for whatever reason. So we all know what we've heard about, nowadays, young men and women coming up into their working career will, they'll be in what, 5, 6 different jobs over the period of their life. And that's what you're seeing there is that people are getting in the industry, they don't do well at it, they get tired of it, they decide it's time for a change. So there's a lot of what we call churn there. And so that 73,000 number is all those people that are either retiring or that are just moving through the industry and on to something else. Okay. Next slide,
before you go
please.
any further there, Greg, I just
Sure.
want to kind of jump in there and ask a few
Absolutely.
questions on that particular topic. That caught my eye. I understand, the number of those leaving for a variety of reasons. Certainly, it's no secret to most that there's a lot of us, like myself, getting a little longer in the tooth, and we'll be moving to retirement, out of the industry, out of the business.
Right.
But and your replacement number, I mean, takes into account the bodies, But what does the Tech Force Foundation look at in terms of the impact on the industry from the loss of that experience? Because that new guy isn't going to have what the guy who just left after 30, 40 years in the business.
It's absolutely huge. You're right, Pete. That's a big loss for the industry because all of that knowledge that's existed over a period of years is just gone. And a lot of those vehicles, they're still going to be around for quite a while. So, you get young men and women coming in, and they're learning. They've got all they can do to just learn the current vehicles and to be able to manage those. And there's no way that they're going to be able to go back and catch up on their own on all the older vehicles, and all that, you know, what, hundreds of thousands of years of experience collectively across the industry. But one thing that does help somewhat with that, and that's something that we advocate for a lot of different reasons, is internships and apprenticeships. So that's one of the best ways to get young men and women into the industry, to get them started right, get them heading in the right direction, and kind of setting them up for success in a first job in the industry. But it's also an opportunity where you have that connection. You have that relationship with someone who maybe is older, they've been around for a while, and as you work on vehicles together, you get the opportunity to capture some of that knowledge that they've had over the years, about older vehicles and that type of thing. So is it a perfect solution? No, but it's probably the best that we have, as far as trying to maintain some of that knowledge that's just otherwise going to disappear.
Yeah, and I guess, and also in keeping with that, when you mentioned the churning, that we have in the business,
Hmm.
guys that come in, or girls for that matter, who come in and decide it's not their cup of tea, it's not something they want to do. That's part of it. But how much do you see, or how much has your research shown that we may be chasing? We may be the ones that are actually chasing some of this talent out. What do you say about
Um,
that?
and I'm smiling, but it's not really something to smile about. Um, I can tell you that that's absolutely the case. I've a couple people that I know. I've heard them quote this, and they say, "We're the only industry that eats our young."
Hmm.
And there's a lot of truth to that. And what it really boils down to is that so often we're just such a fast-paced industry. It's about the vehicles we've got in today. They've got to be repaired. There's no time to waste. The customers want their vehicles back. So it's just you're moving fast. If you're on flat rate, you're moving fast for that reason. It's you know everything is happening very quickly. So to get, and I have to say it's management, to get management to kind of take a step back and focus and say, you know what, we can't just worry about the day-to-day jobs and what cars or trucks we got to get out today. We've got to step back and say, how do we set ourselves up for success for the future? And a lot of that is around learning to put in place the steps that are going to help a young employee starting out with you be successful. So, yes, maybe today it's such a rush that the the technician, the mentor that's supposed to be working with this new tech starting out, that you pull them off because they've got to go work on this car that just got to get done because whatever reason, there's always a reason. But so often we just don't take the time to set up a consistent program to start young techs or even other employees off on the right foot. So that means proper onboarding. When you start them out, do you walk them around the shop? Do you introduce them to everyone? Do you sit down and say, here's our manual, here's our book on what our, it's like an employee guide, right? So here's our employee guide on all the different things that here's our rules, here's how vacation works, here's, how you do this, that, and the other thing. So give them tools to be successful. You introduce them around, you make them feel comfortable. You say, when you need help, here's where you can go to find help. And if you don't do some of these things in properly onboarding new employees, they start off with one hand tied behind their back. They don't feel comfortable. They're new, they're afraid to ask questions, so you don't really set them up for success. And a big part of that, and it's separate really from that onboarding process, but another big piece that we can do is that whole internship mentoring process, where they have someone they're working with and you're guiding them through. So they may have come out of trade school with all of the knowledge, uh, or a good part of knowledge, certainly enough to get them started. But we all know how different it is when you're turning wrenches from what you read in a book. And having someone working side by side with you, showing you, oh, you made a mistake doing that. You need to do it this way, or verifying, yes, that's great, you are doing it right. You got it down, so you can move on to the next thing. That input is just so important to young men and women starting out in our trade, and there's so few places that really do that. So that's where the eating our young comes in. That's where we have roughly 20% turnover in new technicians starting out. Um, Actually, 20% turnover total across the entire technician workforce, and in the first year or so, it's higher. It's like 27, 28%. So
Yeah.
it's a huge problem.
Well, I mean, and some of the other things I think I've seen, uh, and I've said this, the same thing that has made our industry great is also one of the things that is causing us to shoot ourselves in the foot. You take any of these men or women who have started their own business, who have laid it all out on the line, put it all out there, just roll the dice, if you will. To me, that takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of guts to do that, to take that step, and to have that drive and ambition. Uh, those are the same kind of people that don't tell me how to do it. You know what I mean? Don't tell me how to run my business. They have their way of doing things, and for many, especially those like myself, been around for a while. We tend to think about how we came up. Being handed a broom and a mop and
Mm-hmm.
go get coffee for the guys, or that kind of attitude when you're new. But that paradigm doesn't work anymore, does it?
No, no, it doesn't. Um, and there's definitely places that still believe in that. And I when I started in this industry, I was sweeping floors and mopping, and I wasn't overly happy about it, but it didn't last very long. I mean, at that time, it was a different world, let's
Right,
face
right.
it. And I knew I had to pay my dues, and I did it for a short period of time. I didn't complain, and
Well,
the
that's the thing, right? I mean, these youngsters who go to school for 2 years and spend a considerable amount of money to do that, they feel that, hey, I already paid my dues.
yeah,
I've
exactly.
already done that. So, all right. Well, let's move on to the next slide here. You have with focus here on our collision cousins.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, collision, we're talking obviously a much smaller number just because of the size of the industry. Um, but we're talking almost 18,000 here that we need. Again, the vast majority of them coming out of replacement, not too much in the way of growth, but a fairly significant number. Um, One thing I didn't mention on the automotive, you'll see this. We're seeing it here in collision. We saw it in automotive. You'll see it also in diesel. That we did projections last year, so this is the second year we've done projections, and the demand or the shortage went up slightly across all three segments, and it really has been because of the economy being fairly strong here over the last year or two. So if you looked at these numbers last year, the demand would have been a little bit lower, not a huge difference, but just a little bit. If we can go ahead and go on then to diesel, we use a little different methodology for diesel. Not that it probably matters to all of you, but it's just a different model that is proven to be more accurate. But it does give us a pretty consistent number. You'll see here, over the last 3 years, we were at 29,000 for demand. It drops a little bit next year, and one thing I'll say about the demand and how it changes over time. A big factor here is the economy. So in our model, we've tried to be conservative. We don't want to run around yelling, "The sky is falling, the sky is falling." Um, and it is falling to some extent, right? But we don't want to overemphasize or blow the problem out of proportion. So we're trying to be conservative when it comes to numbers and the chances of us, if our economy is staying in the growth spurt that it's in right now, let's say over the next 3 to 5 years, it's unlikely. We're probably going to drop back. We'll probably get at least neutral to 0% growth and quite possibly a little bit of a dip. And so that's what we've programmed into our projections. We adjust those every year. So once the economy moves from a projected economy to having solid numbers, then we readjust and move on from there. So with that, let's go ahead and move into our strategy. So I talked earlier about these three kind of big, uh, the 30,000 foot view of what we're looking at, the three big pieces that we're focusing mostly on. So the first one is marketing. And, I know Pete and I had talked a little bit about, who we need to focus on and, where we really have to do the work on marketing. And so, um, I guess when I look at marketing and when we look at marketing in our strategy, there's really two critical pieces to that. One is image, the other one is opportunity. So, image of a technician. I mean, I'm not telling any of you anything new that this is a problem for this industry, and it's been a problem for this industry for many, many years. Now, I will say it's better than it was, but it's only marginally better. It's not so much better that we're having people, coming into this industry with open arms and embracing it. So we still are fighting, the shade tree mechanic, the the greasy image of a technician, dirty fingernails. That whole thing still persists and it still haunts us to some degree. So we have to get the word out about what the image of a technician is today, which is much different than it was 20 or 30 years ago. So in our industry, we realize that, but the general public doesn't realize it. They have no reason to think differently than what they've heard from those old images because we haven't really done anything as an industry to change that image. So that's number one, and that is huge when it comes to parents. We believe parents and influencers, we call them PIPs, parents and influencers of peripheral students. So it's just a term we coined. But what it really boils down to is who is the one influencing a young man or a young woman when they're in high school, when they're talking about, what direction they want to go, where they want to head for their career. Um, that's who is influencing them, and they are a critical audience for us when it comes to helping to fill that pipeline, helping to get young men and women that want to go into our industry and look at it as a great career opportunity. So the second one of these issues is opportunity. So one of a friend of mine, George Arentz, who I think Pete knows, and many in the industry know, he coined a term that I love, which is that this is not a ladder. It's not a when you think about the industry and you talk about climbing a ladder, um, it's not a ladder, it's a lattice when it comes to this industry because you can go in so many different directions. You think about starting as a technician. If you love being a technician, you want to be a technician for your entire career, you can make a very good living doing that. It could be a great career for you, and you can do it until the day you retire. But if you want to use it as a launching point, and let's say later on you want to open up your own shop, or you want to go to work for a manufacturer, you want to go to work, you want to buy into a tire chain, or you want to open a parts store. It doesn't matter where you want to go. You have so many opportunities in this industry to go in all these different directions. So again, we know that in our industry, but does the general public know that? No, they don't. They think, oh, you're a technician, or they probably think, well, you're a mechanic, you're a grease monkey. But even as those that see you as technicians don't really realize all the different areas that you can go into from that. So getting those two issues out to parents and influencers, as well as to those students that are out there, are absolutely critical if we're going to change things around, if we're going to actually be able to fill that pipeline and have this be a desired career path for young men and women.
Okay, and I got to jump back in there again and ask you a couple of things there, Greg. I know what you said about our image, and I certainly agree with that. I think there's a lot of things that overall can be done to address that image. Um, and I know, and if you're watching, hey, chime in, tell me if I'm wrong. Um, I've had the opportunity to travel around the country, and I've seen a lot of different shops. Some are just stellar examples of professionalism and what we want that industry image to be. Yet there's still those who aren't, you know. And I think one of the things that, and in my humble opinion, that we've done over the years is kind of play down our uh, black sheep cousins, if you want to call it that. You know, we all know they're there, but we don't want to admit it. You know, not publicly anyway. But they do, and when they like the state I live in, there's no requirements, nothing that says I can go down to the local Home Depot or Lowe's store and buy a small box of tools and throw a couple of jack stands in my driveway and put out my placard that now I'm a mechanic. So I that's a whole separate issue. Won't tie you up with that, Greg. I just had to throw that out there, my own little personal soapbox, if you will. Um, and the other side of that, you did allude to, was the image that's being portrayed to the public. You know, they don't understand the complexity of the vehicle that they're driving. In fact, I was just thinking about that this morning. You'll pay a guy. The back end is our dryer at home just kind of took a dump, and that kind of puts the brakes on everything when you can't dry your clothes.
Sure.
Right. Being a mechanic, though, not a problem. It was a challenge, but took care of it. But the thing that made me think was, if that happened to average Joe consumer, and Mama calls Daddy at the office, or vice versa, and says, "Hey, the dryer just died." He said, "Well, call a repairman, have him come out and fix it." Right? Well, I made that call a while back when the washer took a dump. It's like $65, $75 in my area just to have the guy come to the door. And we don't blink an eye at that. And if you've ever worked on your own appliances, guys and gals, it is not that complicated. Yet, when we take our vehicles, or when a consumer takes a vehicle in for service and the check engine light's on, or warning light's on, or something isn't working right, and you tell them it's going to be X amount to diagnose it, it's like, oh my God, how can you charge me so much? You know what I mean? So there's a lot of that going on because you don't understand how complex the vehicle is. And I got to say this too, on the other side of the coin, there are those on the business side of the market that are catering to that and doing these very valuable services for next to nothing on a lost leader kind of thing just to get the business in the door. And I don't agree with that. I think you're cutting everybody's foot, everybody's throat because of that approach. It's worth it. Again, everybody who's listened to me for any time knows that we've used this comparison and it's gaining popularity. The F-22 Raptor, most complex aircraft in the world, combat aircraft in the world, 7.5 million lines of code to make that thing work. You go back to a 2015, 2016 Ford F-150 and it's 100 million lines of code. It's one of the most complex, any modern automobile, most complex piece of technology that you can get involved with. But the consumer needs to understand it. Boy, I just kind of way off of my soapbox here, so I'm going to reel myself back in.
Well, I'll comment on a couple things. I mean, you've absolutely made some good points. Yeah, that example of F-22 Raptor and most luxury cars today, it's like crazy the difference in technology. There's so much more technology when it comes to today's automobiles, and this is almost only the beginning. We all know where it's going from here. It's just going to get increasingly complex. And you're right. There's such a double standard with plumbers or electricians. Somebody, you call a plumber out, and you know they put a new garbage disposal in or whatever it might be, and fix a leak, and you get a bill for $400, and then you pay that, but then when you take your car in, you're shocked when it costs that much, and you also can't believe, like, boy, those plumbers make a lot of money, but then when you take your car in and you think about, well, could my son or daughter, make money doing this? Like, it doesn't, the two don't even equate. Somehow they don't even make that connection. Most people don't make that connection that um, if a plumber makes a lot of money and it costs a lot of money to get your car done, these are all skilled trades.
Yeah.
Skilled trades make money,
Well, think
and
about it
people
too.
don't seem to realize that.
Yeah, I mean these guys too. They have one major difference. They're licensed, and we're not. And again, it's the example I mentioned earlier. I can go. Anybody can go down right now, buy themselves a basic set of tools, stand at the Home Depot, and call themselves a mechanic and open up a business and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
However, as we both know, and anyone who's watching this and watching the Motor Age page knows, because of that technology, because of these systems, they often do a lot more harm than good, and that's giving us the black eye. There's so many things that we've been talking about for so many years. We kind of started here with the need to bring in new talent and the tech shortage and everything, but it's all so interrelated. You can't attack one without the other. But now, in that realm of thought, turn that back around to what we were just talking about. All this high tech. I can't remember the quote. I think his name was John or James Hayward with MIT. A friend of mine recently shared that quotation with me of how he was talking about how if you really want to get involved in high tech, you want to be involved in the automotive industry. And maybe that's something that we can go to those kids and say, hey, these aren't cars; these are rolling computer networks, man.
Mm-hmm.
He said, if you're into the gaming, if you're into the programming, if you're into building your own computers, this is the field for you. There's nothing more high tech. There's nothing more that's going to challenge your skill sets than what we do on a daily basis. So maybe that's how we pump up the enthusiasm in the kids. And then, like you said, then we can reach those parents and say, parents, this is not, to quote an old saying, is that this is not your daddy's Oldsmobile or your granddaddy's Oldsmobile. You know what I mean? This is the Jetsons' Oldsmobile. You know what I mean? That you're driving around in. So maybe that's an approach we need to take. But
Yeah.
oh my goodness, go ahead.
And that's certainly part of our messaging, Pete. It's really important, in materials that we're developing and in some of the materials we have on our website and handouts and things that we develop and we have available for career fairs, etc. That's part of the messaging. Absolutely critical. They've got to understand that it's leading edge technology. It's very high tech. You can make money at it. There's massive opportunity, lots of jobs out there, and you add all those things together. Why wouldn't you want to do this for a career? And of course it's not for everybody. You've got to have a passion for working with your hands. You've got to enjoy that that hands-on piece and that tactile experience. Not everybody does, but part of the problem is the kids just don't have the opportunity for that. And that's kind of like our third leg of the stool that I'll talk about later. But
so let's get on to the second one there, because
okay, all right, let's go.
I know we're both just going off. So let's go on to the second one, and I see a lot of things we're just talking about are coming up in that. So I'll let you share that with everybody who's watching.
Yes. So when we talk about, I mentioned that we see ourselves, our foundation, as being a hub. So we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're not trying to say, oh, let's start with a clean sheet of paper and we're going to do all these things. What we're trying to do is harness what's already out there. So serve as kind of a hub and a collection point for good information that's already out there, for good programs, for resources. What we really want to do is pull all these things together, that we can pull them in from industry so that we can push them back out and share them in the process. So there's a lot of good programs out there where organizations have come up with, a particular program. Like this organization's got a great mentoring program. This organization really has it nailed when it comes to doing a career fair. And you can go on and on about all these things that are out there. And so often, I'm at a lot of various industry events and conventions, and you'll hear about, oh, so and so has this program, and then you ask around the room, so how many people have heard of that? Nobody, virtually nobody. So often we go out reinventing the wheel when we already have resources at our fingertips that we can use, and so often we just don't know about them. So this piece for us is about understanding what's already out there as far as good tools, and sorting through them, finding here's the best, here's best practices in this particular area, here's best practice in this area. So pulling that information together, finding out what other information we need about it so we can give organizations enough information on it so that they can actually use it, pulling it all in, and then making that available on our website. Um, Another really important piece is consistent messaging. So we talked about we got to get parents on board. We got to let students know what those real opportunities are. All the things we've been discussing the last few minutes. But if we go out as a scattered industry and every organization is sharing that differently, not using the same words, the same catchphrases, or it's a repeatability. When it comes to marketing, it's all about repeatability. You got to get the same message over and over multiple times before it even makes an impact. Anybody in marketing knows this. So we're never basically doing that as an industry. We're always, everybody's off fragmented doing their own thing. And it's only through coming together and focusing in on this in a cohesive strategy that we're going to change that. So that's what this whole, collective voice strategy is about. It's about coordinating our efforts, getting the good resources out there, making them available to everyone, and then going forward with consistent messaging out to the public. And we can't do it ourselves. It's about um, sharing information with all of our partners who then can push that information out to their constituencies. So if you think about some of the names that you saw in our marketing partners, there's some big companies there, and they've got a whole lot of customers out there that they can push this messaging to, and they have their own partners that they can push this messaging out to. So utilizing our collective voice as an industry to get some of these important points out is absolutely critical. One other thing is we provide a lot of resources. Like we've done the work of creating a lot of collateral materials for recruiting and things like that. So if you want to go to I'm sorry, a career fair or a school, a recruiting event at a school or something like that, we have materials where you can go and pull them down off of our website. So the work is already done, the messaging is already established. You can just print them off and utilize them. So you don't have to go out, whether it's a small individual shop or, a large corporation. You can take these materials and repurpose them, just download them off of our site. So that's another thing that we've done to try to help get that consistent messaging out there for everyone. So with that, why don't we go on to the third one, hands-on experiences. So if you think about it, when's the last time you saw, and I know there's exceptions, but generally speaking, the last time you saw, a father out in the driveway changing oil with their kid or tuning up a car? It doesn't happen anymore. I mean, I did that when I was a kid. That's how I first got involved with vehicles, but it just doesn't happen anymore. Nowadays, people will open the hood on their vehicles. If they even get that ambitious, they open the hood, they take a look inside, they scratch their head for a few seconds and then close the hood again. Like they're not working on those cars. And along with that, so many of these shop programs in school are gone anymore. So I spoke earlier about having that, that tactile that just feel for things that are tactile, putting them together, taking them apart, having them actually work, no parts left over. I mean, there's a lot of satisfaction in that.
Yeah.
So, how do you get kids to even know whether they feel that way, whether they enjoy that, if it's that creativity is fulfilling to them when there's no opportunity for them to do it? So, we
Yeah.
feel that's a big missing piece right now. So, one
And
of the things that we're focusing on is starting to work with different organizations to build after school activities and events, things where young kids starting in mainly in the junior high level, let's say seventh and eighth grade, starting out to actually be able to do those things, see if they enjoy them. We had a pilot program that we did with the Arizona Science Center, where we set up an after-school program like this. And the thing that we really liked about the Science Center is it's got like instant credibility. So you think about, with parents and with educators, science centers, it's science. It's not working on cars, it's not transportation, it's science. But yet it is, STEM. It's absolutely science, our world, right? So it gives us that instant credibility where educators and parents say, yeah, I'll take my kid at the science center. So we set up this program with the local science center, and it was like, we just call it a technical challenge. So we had 3 or 4 different modules where um, we took, and these were seventh and eighth graders. So we want to start young. We feel that's really, really important. We took them in and we picked like 4 topics. So one was a turbocharger, one was vehicle safety, one was gears, and one I think was brakes. So what we did is we had just a very simple curriculum for them. We brought them in, I think it's 12 weeks after school, once a week. And we brought them in. The first thing is, we gave them a little bit of theory about, a turbocharger, let's say. Explain to them, show them some PowerPoints. This is how it works. This is why we need it. So we kind of started with, here's a problem that industry had, the transportation industry had, that they had to solve. And so we then talk about how they went about it and what device they came up with. So one was a turbocharger. We need more power out of an engine. We need to find a way to generate greater power out of the same amount of same size engine, the same displacement. So we give them that theory. Then we taught them how to use a very simple CAD program. Basically a junior high school level CAD program. So they drew up a turbocharger, and then at the Science Center, they have a lot of wonderful tools there, including a 3D printer. So they actually printed out the turbocharger housing and the impeller, the pieces, and then they were able to, they put it together, they could paint it. Um, they do all this, and then on the last week, they would bring their parents in, and it was kind of like a show and tell. Like, here's what our group learned about. We learned about turbochargers, and they bring up the parts that they printed out, and so that was a way to, you know, one way. And as I said, it was a pilot. We learned a lot of things from it. Maybe some things we do different next time. But it's those kinds of things where we got to get creative and say, what do we do to engage these kids? You can't talk about these careers. You've got to engage them so they're actually doing something. And
yeah.
we feel like that is super important. So we've started off on a number of different similar initiatives. One thing I'm really excited about is there's a school in Colorado, a high school, and they've got an outstanding uh, program with fuel cell vehicles. And you may have heard of the Shell Eco Marathon.
Yeah, we Ridge High School.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I actually wrote a story about their first run at the Eco Challenge there. And for you guys who aren't watching, this is a contest for best fuel economy, and some of the top schools in the world compete at this. And it's not about speed. They have a course that they have to complete, right? And they have a certain amount of time to complete it. But it's how far can they go, and how much can they get out of that fuel cell or whatever power plant they decided to use. And these kids are at Wheat Ridge High School in Colorado. Donnie Seifer, who is now
Mm-hmm.
executive director at NASA, actually brought this to my attention. STEM program, as you were mentioning, and they entered a hydrogen fuel cell powered vehicle. They had to build this, guys. They had to build this from scratch in order to compete. And they had some challenges. I tell you what, if you go on motorrace.com, you can still dig up the article and read the whole story. But the bottom line was they overcame all of those challenges and won. And they were competing against schools like MIT and University of California, and some of the best technical schools in the country, or in the world for that matter, and took first place in their class. And these were high school youngsters. And to kind of carry on that story too, because certainly that got them pumped up. You know what I mean? So you can imagine the energy in that classroom when they were going to that class. They got back on the plane, right? But more locally here, probably about 5 minutes from where I'm sitting is a high school, and then maybe another 15 minutes up the road is another area high school, both in the same school district. The one automotive program was led by the same instructor for many years. He retired. He knew he was going to retire, and it just kind of went down. The other school, the young man was asked to start a program there. He had 2 empty classrooms and 2 parking spots in the parking lot, teacher's parking lot. That's it. And he started off with the kids, showing them how to take care of a car, detail it, clean it, and that's what they would do during class periods. They would go through the car, he'd show them things on the car, and then they would detail the teacher's car or something for him. But what he was saying is just like what you were saying. It's the lattice that our industry has to offer that many times we don't consider. You might come in as a technician, but you could grow to be, it's always been like, okay, well, if you want to get out of that, you got to get your own shop. Well, that's not necessarily the case. You could go to work for any of the OEMs. You could go to work for any of the aftermarket companies. Maybe you get involved in training the next generation of technicians. Maybe you get involved with training the current generation of technicians. Maybe you get on the engineering team. Maybe you split off and you get into the marketing and the sales or the PR or who knows. And that's what this instructor really drove home with his kids, is that the automotive industry is not just about becoming a mechanic. This program is not just about being a tech. This program is about how to speak car, so that when you got into the industry, you could do anything you wanted. You could go to the parts side, you could go to the sales side, you could go to the technical side, you could go to the industry in the big companies, or you could stick with local mom and pop, whatever you wanted to do. But if you're going to be a success in any of it, you had to speak car. And I think that's a big thing that what you just described, that example of saying, here's a way to give them a taste, a few lessons in car-ease, if you want to call it that, right? To give them that taste and get them excited. And then that's, when if their parents are really sharp and they see that, hey, my child really has an aptitude for this, my child really has a lot of excitement about this. And I'm, just a side note here, there's a young lady that comes to mind immediately. I've seen her on YouTube. Her name is Faye Hadley. She owns a company called Pistons and Pixel Dust. And she's a mobile tech. She goes around the San Antonio, Texas area, working on cars for people, and especially empowering women to service and work on their own cars. And she's a Harvard graduate. But here she is, turning those wrenches, getting dirty every day like the rest of us, So anyway, like I said, I appreciate that you get programs out that are getting kids involved, and I think you got some clips that might show us something along those lines, don't you?
Yes, we've got a couple videos that I think would be good to show, just to give you an idea. Some of the messaging that we're talking about, what we think has to get out there, I think these videos kind of do a good job of that. So, yeah, why don't we go ahead and take a look at the first
set that
one.
first one up for us there, Greg. Tell us a little bit about what we're going to be seeing in the first one.
Okay, so the first video is about, it's kind of looking or speaking, the young men and women in the video are kind of speaking to those of us in the industry, saying, what would what would you say to us? What would you say to the younger you about careers, about getting involved in this industry? And, kind of, I guess it's kind of like give us the same chance and opportunity that you gave yourself, and kind of help set us up for a lot of the great things that you probably experienced in your career as well.
Let's take a look.
Okay.
You know me. I'm just a younger version of you.
I like to tear stuff apart. so I can put it back together.
My hands are my best tools. I learn with my hands. I work with them.
I think with them.
We know how to make things go.
So what would you tell me if I was the younger you?
Would you tell me to stop fidgeting?
Sit at my desk and try to be like everybody else.
Or that there's only one road to success? Or should I keep driving like you did, fixing stuff and figuring out how to keep the world moving?
Help me show the world that there's a profession right here in my hands.
Help me build my life and my career the way I'm wired to work.
For us, this is how we work, and we can lay that across. It's how we are, wired for success. If we stand together, stand for those of us who love working with our hands, we'll not only champion tomorrow's workforce of technicians, but we just may change the way everyone thinks about technical careers.
You figure it out how to be you.
Now help me be me.
Very good. Really enjoyed that. And again, it's kind of goes what we were talking about here. You know, this is the same kind of excitement I saw in the students' eyes when I went to Wesley Chapel High School. I did a video interview there with who at the time was the head of the program, and some of the students there. And here, I'll never forget one young man in particular who was very proud of the fact that he was a straight A student, and he was an exceptional athlete. You know, he was on all these different sport teams, and probably has a good shot, or would have a good shot at getting a scholarship for his athletic ability. He actually believed strongly that he could go pro in some of these sports if he wanted to. But then he met the guy in charge of this automotive program and found out that he really, really, really dug working on cars. He really dug working with his hands. And what he would tell me is that, you know, being able to take something that was broken and make it whole again to where it was going to do what it needed to do again was very satisfying for him. And the last I heard, he was doing well as a factory tech at one of our local dealerships, you see, because they're just up the street from this high school, and they're hiring those kids faster than graduated. So that was excellent. So, and I know we have a second one here, so tell us about what we're going to be seeing in the second one.
All right. So this video is about, so it's absolutely directed at parents, and it's entitled Watch How Your Kids Play. So I guess what kind of generated our interest in making a video like this was what we learned in doing a lot of interviews and talking to techs currently, and even to parents, was so often we heard, you know, I felt this way since I was very young. Like, I always enjoyed taking things apart. You know, I took my mom's toaster apart. You know, I took this into a million pieces, and so they always, or quite often, started very young when they just had that feel, and that's what they would spend their spare time doing. And so we felt like there was a message for parents that, you know, be aware of what your kids do when they're young and what they seem inclined to do kind of on their own before they might get pushed off in different directions or get into school where none of this is maybe even offered. And so it's really focused on, pay a little attention. Some kids are made to do some things, kids are made to do other things, and maybe it's something worth watching when they're young.
Cool. All right, let's take a look.
That's it. This one.
Want to know what your kid will be one day?
Yep. Okay. Yes.
Then watch how they play. We're all wired differently. Some kids are born to sing and dance, some to teach, and others to solve. Do you know a kid like that? Who can take anything apart and put it back together? These kids are wired to work with their hands. So why do we keep telling them there's only one 4-year road to success?
Yes. 3.
Instead, why not help them find a technical career of their dreams? One that uses their talent, curiosity, and problem-solving skills. One that's high-tech with a great paycheck. One that cannot be shipped overseas. The transportation industry is waiting for the brilliance of your son or daughter. Visit futuretechsuccess.org to discover how your child is wired for success.
Very good. You know, Greg, like I said, I mean, boy, we've covered an awful lot. Went longer. I think this is probably the longest shop talk I've ever done, but I think every single second of it has been worthwhile. So I hope those who are watching or will be watching later on YouTube have watched all the way to the end and saw those clips. Now, of course, the challenge, guys and gals, is we got to get those messages out. It's similar to what we've talked about before about the ASE certifications. They're important. They're something that this is what we have. This is our existing standard. And while we in the industry are very familiar with what it means, we've got to let those outside, those consumers, know as much about what they mean as we do. This is another example, right, Greg? We've got to make sure that you have a great message here, but unless we can get it aired on the networks and get it out in front of the public where they can see it, take it to the career fairs. Shop owners, if you're watching, like you said, heard Greg say, we're starting in middle school with these kids. Get involved. Reach out to the Tech Force Foundation about how you might be able to help in your own community. Go to that job fair at the school, whether it's the middle school or the high school, and bring them something. Show them really what the real future that this industry has. I'm going to be the first one to admit it, man. I was a pessimistic son of a gun here about 4 years ago, 3-4 years ago, looking at our industry and thinking, we got a lot of talented men and women who are not making what they're worth. And there's a lot of other industries who are absolutely willing to pay them what they're worth, so we're seeing them leaving. I'll be the first to admit, I was one of those parents that told my kids, if you decided you were going to go be a mechanic, I was going to kick your backside, man, because it's a tough job. It took a big investment in tools, and back then, the earnings potential was modest, to say the least. But that's changing, and it's changing at light speed with all these advances in technology. The person who has those critical thinking skills, those problem-solving skills, it's not just about putting stuff back together with your hands. Any trained monkey can take something apart and put it back together. It's taking apart, being able to identify what's wrong with what's there, or being able to apply that to these complex systems, especially the electronic systems, and then putting it back together, only now so that it works the way it was intended to. That is where the skill set lies, right, Greg? That's what we're looking for.
Absolutely.
So, Greg, I want to thank you so much for taking some time out to hang out with me today and share what Tech Force Foundation does. Before I cut you loose, hey, tell everybody if they want to know more, where do they go to find out?
Well, first of all, absolutely my pleasure to join you on the show, Pete. I enjoyed it very much. So, yes, for those of you interested in learning more about Tech Force or possibly contacting us for information, of course, everything that we do costs money to run, so we're also always appreciative of opportunities to have people donate to us. That's what helps us do what we get done and helps us get money out to students. But you can contact us at www.techforcefoundation.org, and you'll take some time to look through the site, and also look. There's a section there for resources that we call the iHub, and that's where you'll find some of the things that I was speaking about, as far as materials that you can download, articles that you might find are helpful. There's a lot of good stuff there, so please.
Oh yeah, and again, guys, I mean, we didn't even get a chance to touch on the scholarship program that they oversee and administer to help students get involved in the automotive industry in different avenues, not just the mechanical side, right? So, by all means, check out techforcefoundation.org. Again, they are a nonprofit, so if you can lend your support, or if you're a corporation or partner that's watching today or caught sight of this video, I'm sure they're always looking to add to their corporate partner roster. That's not going to hurt them in the least. And in return, it's helping you, because you're the ones who are making the stuff that we have to fix. So you better help us find the talent to do it, right? So with Greg, I'm going to cut Greg loose for just a minute, but stick around. I got one more thing for you. Greg, stand by. I will be right back with you in 1 second.
Thank you.
Guys, like I said, thanks again for watching Shop Talk Live here with Greg and the Tech Force Foundation. You can find the link in the description here, either on our Facebook post or later on our YouTube channel. And I did want to also too make mention that another link you'll find there is for our April 11th Motor Rage TST webinar. We start at 6:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Our topic, servicing today's AC systems, what you don't know can hurt you. And we will be talking about a lot to do with the 1234YF systems. I've talked to a lot of shop owners recently who still haven't pulled the trigger on investing in the equipment and tooling you're going to need to service these vehicles. And that's costing you money today. We'll also show you some ways to find those really teeny little leaks. We've got some great guests for this one too. We've got Peter Cole. He is the VP of Neutronics, but more importantly, the role he'll be serving is the Service Committee Chairman for the SAE Interior Climate Control Committee. That's the committee that actually makes the rules for all the tools that we'll be using. Mala's going to be supporting us there. I think we'll actually have one of their engineers, and he'll help us demonstrate one of the new 1234YF machines that Mala offers, so that you get an idea of the differences and how important it is to use the right equipment for the job. And on top of that, we have some help from Tracer Products. And hey, if that isn't enough to get you to come out and hang out with us on Thursday evening, here's one more. If you register before 4 p.m. on the 11th, in other words, you register in time for us to go live, one of you guys and gals might win a Legend refrigerant identifier courtesy of Neutronics. That's a $3,000 tool, guys and gals. So there you go. There's one price of admission right there. It's not even that. Mala stepped up. They have actually tossed in a brand new 1234YF leak detection tool, the sniffer that we all know and love, but designed for 1234YF systems. Somebody's going to get that, take home. And last but not least, Tracer Products is supplying one of their brand new 1234YF leak detection die kits that comes with the die, light, the whole 9 yards for you to be able to properly find those little small leaks in these 1234 systems. And believe me, as much as that stuff costs, you better find and fix that leak, because your customer is going to have to pay for the stuff that leaked out because you missed it. Anyway, that's going to do it for today's edition of Shop Talk Live. Thanks so much for coming out, and we will see you in about 2 weeks.